Hello friends, welcome to the study law sessions. The series of learning law in a simple way, which we have started some time back from this channel Study Law at Pendiala. We are discussing various topics related to the law, particularly important topics that are helpful for the students who are appearing for the degree course of the law. Today we are going to discuss with respect to amendments to the Constitution of India. The world's lengthiest written constitution had 395 articles in 22 parts and 8 schedules when the constitution was commenced on 26 November 1949. Now the Constitution of India has 440 articles, numbering up to the 395 articles with different clauses in 25 parts and 12 schedules. Changes to the constitution is not that simple. At the same time, it is slightly flexible also. We will know the process of the constitutional amendment. It is done through a well-defined amendment process. The unique features of the constitution. Indian constitution is one of the most happening constitution in the world with unique features of rigidity and flexibility. Rigidity with respect to the basic structure and important fundamental rights. Flexibility with respect to the accessibility to the law of justice and human elements of the society through a process that is called the amendment to the Constitution. So now we will discuss how the provision for the amendment is there and what are the steps involved in it. The Article 368, it gives the provision to the Parliament to change any part of the Constitution including fundamental rights. At the same time, Article 13 prevents the changes that violates the basic structure of the Constitution. Thus, both the rigidity as well as the flexibility is enshrined in this Indian Constitution. We will discuss a little more in detail about these two articles. And before that, how the Constitution can be amended and what are the types of the amendments that we will discuss. Basically, there are three ways in which a Constitution can be amended. Amendment by a simple majority of the Parliament. Particularly such a provisions which are neither controversial or a simple way of day-to-day aspects. When amendment is done, this amendment can be done with a simple majority of the Parliament. And there are certain amendments that require the special majority of the Parliament. We will know what is a special majority. And in addition to that, there is another type of a amendment that is not only by the special majority of the Parliament, but also it should be ratified by at least half of the state legislatures. So coming back to Article 13 and 368. Article 13 prevents the passing of the laws which take away or abridge the fundamental rights provisions. So more important is the fundamentals also can be changed, but the important aspects of the fundamental rights, which normally we call as the basic structure for the Constitution, that cannot be taken away by amending through Article 368. And 368 does not contain the power to amend the Constitution except by a procedure. And what is the constitutional amendment procedure or a process? The procedure for the amendment of the Constitution is laid down in Article 368. Amendment of the Constitution can be initiated only by the introduction of a bill for the purpose in either house of the parliament. It may be Lok Sabha or it may be Rajya Sabha. And amendment cannot be started its process through introduction into any state legislatures. It is not possible to introduce in a state legislature. It should be only either in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. And this bill can be introduced either by a minister or a private member and does not require prior permission of the president. The bill can be straight away introduced through government or any other member. It may be opposition party or it may be a private member. So the bill must be passed in each house by a special majority, that is a majority more than 50% of the total membership of the house and a majority of the 2/3 of the members of the house present in voting. Each house must pass the bill separately. In case of a disagreement between the two houses, there is no provision for holding a joint sitting of the two houses of for the purpose of deliberation and passage of the bill. If the bill seeks to amend the federal provisions of the Constitution, anything that's related to the states or state related subjects, it must be also ratified by the legislatures of the states by a simple majority. That is, a majority of the members of the house in present and voting. Here the special majority means at least 50% of the total member of the house should be present, and then the 2/3 of those present need to pass the bill. If it is a simple majority, the number of people, any number who are present with a minimum decorum of the house, and then the simple majority is prevailed upon. And after duly passed by both the houses of the parliament and ratified by the states where the federal requirements are there, then the bill is presented to the president for the assent. President must give his assent to the bill. He can neither withhold his assent to the bill nor return the bill for the reconsideration of the parliament. After the president's assent, the bill becomes an act. That is called a Constitutional Amendment Act, CAA in simple terms. Constitution stands amended in accordance with the terms of the act. Once the act is passed, then it will be gazetted with the effective date of the implementation of such amendment or the act. And here, what is the scope of amendability in Indian Constitution? The present position is that our Parliament under Article 368 can amend any part of the Constitution, including the fundamental rights, but without affecting the basic structure of the Constitution. That is more important. However, the Supreme Court is yet to define or a clarity on what constitutes a basic structure of the Constitution. Here, when we are talking about the basic structure, who decides the basic structure? It is the Supreme Court ultimately which decides the basic structure of the Constitution. If a bill is passed through the Parliament, when it is challenged in the Supreme Court decides whether the bill has violated any basic structure of the Constitution. It has the ultimate power to define or decide the basic structure of the Constitution based on the constituencies or contents of the bill. Supreme Court derives this basic structure from the various judgments that follows the consensus on the basic features of the Constitution. And what are these basic features? One is the supremacy of the Constitution. Constitution cannot be questioned in whatever the way or where in any observations or a condition. Supremacy of the Constitution cannot be challenged. Then the socio-economic justice is also one important basic features of the Constitution, which is amongst a welfare state policy. Then the principle of equality is also equally important, where the contents of the principles of the equality or features of the principles of the equality cannot be violated through any amendment to the Constitution. Another feature is sovereign, democratic, republican nature of the Indian polity. The important aspects of the preamble: sovereignty of the country, democracy, norms of the country, and republican nature of the country of Indian polity cannot be moderated or cannot be violated due to the constitutional amendment. Yet another feature is a judicial review or the process of a judicial justification. Free and fair elections. Being a democratic country, the elections is the backbone of any democracy. So, any amendment to the constitution should not impact the free and fair elections of the country. And one more important feature which is also included with the 42nd amendment to the constitution is the secular nature of the Indian features of the constitution of the India. The secular characteristics of the constitution cannot be changed through any amendment. And freedom and dignity of the individual is also equally important. So also independence of the judiciary. And separation of the powers between the legislature, executive and judiciary should be withheld, and they should not have any impact to any kind of amendment. Another feature is the parliamentary system. India being a democratic running with a parliamentary system, any act of constitution or any amendment of the constitution cannot be amended that will impact on the parliamentary system. Constitution gives the power to the parliament. At the same time, there is a limit of the power of the parliament. So, but when the constitution is amended, the power of the parliament cannot be again violated for whatever the provisions the parliament has in the existence constitution. And yet another important feature that will prevent the constitutional amendment is the federal character of the constitution. India has unique federal and unitary features. Federal features particularly with respect to the number of states and union and territories that are under the umbrella of the union government and unitary nature of the parliament. So any amendment or any issue that will question the federal character should not be considered for the amendment. And rule of law is equally important, and rule of law normally constitution article 14 talks about the equality of the law or a rule of law. Amendment to the constitution should not change the process of rule of law. And effective access to the justice. Constitution provides that each person has the access, whether he is a poor, below poverty, or irrespective of the any differences, religion, caste, place, or any other characteristics, each person of the country should have access to the justice. So any amendment to the constitution should not have an impact on this parameter. And finally, the unity and integrity of the nation, which is more important. The entire constitution is enforced only to ensure the unity and integrity of the nation, giving the opportunities and accessibilities to the people of the country for various powers, privileges and accesses. So any amendment should not have any impact on the unity and integrity of the nation. And other features which are almost equally important are the harmony and balance between the fundamental rights and directive principles. Directive principles are not legally enforceable while fundamental rights are legally enforceable. That doesn't mean that directive principles can be removed or can be altered in such a way that the very spirit of the directive principles is lost. So amendment should not be done to the constitution to give anything that has a negative impact on the implementation of the directive principles of state policy. And each amendment should have a reasonableness, why an amendment is done and what is the reason, what are its positive impact for the country to be taken into the consideration. So any amendment should have a reasonableness in its content and spirit. Okay, friends, these are all the important process of the constitutional amendments and which are the subjects that cannot be amended. That's what we have learned, and we will meet in the next session with another topic of the law subject.